Welcome, fellow travelers, to another episode of the Never Ending Adventure podcast, bringing it back to the good old intro. This is one of your co-hosts, Russell Tyndall, and as always, with me is one of my best good buddies, the one, the only, Neddy P. What's up? How you doing, Ned? How have you been recently?
Good, man. It's been a busy season, busy fall. That's for sure. It's I think it's going to calm down around holiday time. We've got one more trip coming up, and then I think we're like coasting out to the end of the year, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Well, man, what do you think of my shirt? Do you kind of like what I have going on today?
I love that shirt every time you wear it. It's the Gengar Lavender Town shirt, right, which is awesome.
Right. What's up with your tone, dude?
With my tone?
I don't want to just call you out on the podcast, but your tone right now, it's kind of peeving me off.
Peeving you off, dude? Yeah.
Kind of peeving me off, man.
It's pretty much.
I don't want to get hot-headed about this, but
you.
I don't want to, this is really irritating me. What is this tone that you have?
I always have tone. You've never heard my real voice, Russell. It's always a tone.
I've never heard your real voice. All right. Well, if you could pick up on the hint, what is this episode? We're an Adventure Time podcast. What episode are we possibly talking about today? I think it's probably season 5, episode 30, Frost and Fire. Oh, man. It's a good one. It's Ice King. It's Flame Princess. It's Finn.
Clash of the Titans freaking coming in here.
Yeah.
We figured it was probably going to happen.
A mech battle.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it turns into a Dragon Ball Z mech battle, Gundam. Like, it was like all sorts of that
calling
kind of
out their
fight scenes.
Their fights. Like, I love that. And this is like my tops of the episode. We'll just go ahead and say it. Like, I love when they called out like their own moves at the end when they're having the final big battle or whatever. And what is it? So Flame Princess says Inferno shot, which is pretty sick. And then Ice King says Ice King. Thought it was so funny. I mean, really, y'all know I love anime, so of course I was getting into that, and that was a fun little bit. And I was even going to make a joke about the flame versus the ice feels very Akainu versus Aokiji for my One Piece fans. But anyways, that might be the wrong show. Let's get back to the Adventure Time. But
yeah, I've always wondered about like fire and ice battles in everything, in Pokemon, in video games, because it's funny that water beats fire, but fire beats ice. In my opinion, it's always been something that peeves me just a little bit, because as soon and so I do like that this one they do a good job of being like, she can melt the ice, but the water and the ice still hurts her. It's not like just melting everything is just eliminating the fact that it's going to be detrimental to her at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we see that early on too. I mean, they kind of allude to like his ability to affect her, and that she is yelling at him and he's like backing off and doesn't know what's going on. This is when they're having the picnic. And of course, he has frozen prunes and liver in his pocket, and he's just like tossing them at her. And because unlike at the beginning of this episode, when Finn is tossing popcorn or something at her, and it's disappearing, and she's like, "Oh, kind of tickles. It feels good." Right. The difference is these are frozen liver and frozen prunes, and so as they're I guess evaporating or whatever through the flame on her, it's kind of hurting her because of the condensation in the water. So there is an effect that ice does have on the fire. We do get to see that a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's a really good point, because I agree. In my mind, it makes sense that fire would destroy ice, but if you can control the water that is within the ice, then you would have the advantage. I just don't know. It seems like Ice King's power is pretty limited to turning things into ice and then controlling it once it is ice.
Yeah, well, because I don't think he can. In what was it, the dungeon episode where it's Ice King and Lemon Grab and Shelby and Tree Trunks and everything, when Ice King's like, it's the ice in the air is evaporating too fast in the room with the fish at the bottom of it. He's like, oh, I can't cast an ice spell because it's evaporating too fast. So it's much more beyond. He can only control water in its solid state, because it can be in a liquid state and it can be in a gaseous state. So it is That's why he's the Ice King. And it's kind of the stupidest thing to be breaking down,
right?
Because he's not the Water King.
He's not the Water King.
So, but it rings true there that he can turn water into ice and then probably manipulate it in any way, but it couldn't just manipulate water in a gaseous form or whatever. So,
well, before we get too much deeper into this episode, Ned, do you think revisiting this on our podcast gave you a greater appreciation for this episode? Because I almost feel like you might go into this not necessarily loving this episode, not because not much happens, but I don't know, like it's just a battle. Like there's some manipulation, there's the owl, but at the same time, like this isn't a typical Ned episode in my mind for some reason.
No, I really like this episode because it's more like canonical. Like this is a very staple moment that comes in like later. Like Finn and Flying Princess's relationship is never the same. Like literally from this moment, this is what killed it. And I think it's a good turning point as well, because there's so much in this episode that's still starting from the beginning when Finn is tossing the popcorn on her. He's like, "Is this like eating for you?" And she's like, "I don't really know." Then he's able to, like, Ice King is manipulating that or making fun of them because he's like, "Hey, you're hugging a log, you freaking weirdo."
Instead of Finn, you could be hugging Finn, but you're hugging a log.
So Ice King does provoke
She's quick to anger. Fight. Yeah, Flame Princess is really quick to anger, which I was a little annoyed by that. I was hoping she wouldn't be. I thought we had matured past that a little bit. I mean, obviously, she's still a teenager. She still has heightened emotions and has some anger issues in the past. So that's not going to just disappear right away. But I was hoping she wouldn't be so quick to anger. But she definitely goes up there and almost, I mean, in classic Land of Ooh fashion, just starts punching them, slapping them, like, makes a heart out of fire in the sky and just beats the heck out of him and lights his hams on fire, which was very funny. Because of course later on he has flame retardant underwear,
Grundies, his flame retardant Grundies,
which is very goofy. But
that's I like that first scene because obviously she is warranted that she can beat him up a little bit because he's just like being a jerk. And then the next one he's just like, "Hey, I just was saying, hey guys." And she still doesn't pick up the next time that Finn is able to just be like, he's got a tone. He's using a tone with you. You should go and beat him up.
Oh yeah,
that
totally
happens.
He even Finn is framing that interaction. So after, I guess we should talk about why he's doing this and people know this.
Let me finish my point.
Oh yeah, please go ahead.
I'm showing the instances of this episode that go to my point.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because you were talking about her maturity and everything.
Right.
And I think that this is important because she's left the Ice Kingdom and she's striking out on her own. She'd lived in that lantern pretty much her entire life. So a lot of that development in terms of just knowing the world around her and being able to react with that normally is still very, very, I mean, it's less than Finn. Like she makes Finn look emotionally aware or culturally aware, I should say. So I think that this is just an important episode in that regard where them breaking up is going to give her this opportunity to go out into the world and again, kind of look at things through a new perspective and be like, I do need to grow and I need to know the world and know people enough to not be manipulated anymore, So I think that's where we finally kind of gone over the cusp of her maturity, is that she's now going to be much, much more independent and emotionally aware, culturally aware, things like that.
That's really fascinating. This is like a later episode deep thought for me, but I think it's worth bringing up. I wasn't sure if that's what's going to happen. In my mind, she's one of the most powerful, and of course you've seen this show, I've never seen it, but she's one of the most powerful creatures in all of Ooh. And initially evil through influence, through her environment, all that stuff. And evil more so just doesn't know what good is, But I feel a little bit like she will no longer have this good influence around her, like someone who is, a good natured. I think Finn, even though in this episode he is manipulative and he does show some of his darker sides, I think it's a little bit of like, it's maturity, but it's bad maturity. Like he's growing up, he's learning things about himself, and he's kind of thinking in a selfish manner. I think as a lot of people do when they're his age. And I don't think I think he needs to learn to get past that and to mature. But I do think like he is a good-natured person and he would be a great influence on her. And I am fearful that this might play out poorly in the future when you have her being so incredibly powerful and not being around a good influence. And I'm just like, where is she going to go? Like, who is she going to be influenced by moving forward? It feels like with this episode and then Skywitch episode, which we just talked about, like evil is on the move in Ooh is kind of what I'm feeling right now. And that's just 2 episodes. And I get that Adventure Time likes to do this for like an episode or 2. And then you feel like you're drawn like, oh, here's where we're going. And then they kind of forget about that for like a season and then we bring it back up. But if I was just going to like maybe too quickly, like not theoretically speak, but just think of what's happening. No, you don't have to do it, Ned. I was like,
I'm going to hit the button.
You don't have to do it. But I feel like that's where we're going. I feel like we're itching toward evil, making the move. A bunch of these forces, whether this is like, this wasn't pushed by an evil force. This was pushed by Finn, basically misinterpreting dreams. And then kind of, you know, I mean, obviously the Cosmic Owl makes a reappearance in this episode, which is really important. And I'm big fan of the Cosmic Owl, gotta say.
Dude, he's got some great episodes
coming up. I love when he
like
comes.
Cosmic Owl, Prismo, Jake episodes are really good. Oh, good.
Yeah, and also he's my lovely for the episode. So let's just go ahead and do that.
Give me some sugar, baby.
Dude, he's just super fun. He's such a unique character that this show has that I think a lot of shows from this era, in my mind, didn't really have, or at least maybe the era beforehand, because again, this wasn't when I was watching cartoons. I'll say when I was growing up, there wouldn't be like a random Cosmic Owl that could influence and be like such a deep character in a cartoon. It's so cool to see that. And I love that there's just so little explanation given for him right now. We know so little. Yeah. Like all we know is Jake freaks. Like basically Finn tells him, oh yeah, the owl was there and he was laughing at me. And I think in the first dream, maybe he was whispering and I'm not really sure what he was saying. And then Jake spits out his coffee. He's just like, dude, you just had a prophetic dream like this. That's crazy. We need to figure this out. You need to have that first terrible influence. Like, go manipulate them again. You need to have that first dream once more. Please, let's figure this out.
It's nice to know that because the first one is all about Jake's croak dream. And it's because I guess he died in that dream, but the first time
which was a self-fulfilling prophecy, which in a way kind of occurs again here.
Again, that's why I think it's the cool aspect of like the Cosmic Owl showing up in dreams is that he's not necessarily actually doing things, but these, what do you call it? Like, it's kind of like monkey's paw-ish.
He kind of plays like the fates. Like if I,
like whatever you're dreaming about is going to come true. Yeah. And it's not necessarily going to be like, Flame Princess is going to light your crotch on fire and then Ice King's going to throw ice on your crotch. Like that's not going to literally happen. And again, that was like Jake's croak dream where he wasn't actually like flying in space. He was in the pond with Banana Man or whatever. So, but I like it too, just because but that's where it's funny because I think we do have a major Jake mistake here.
Making big pancakes.
Because Jake he's not even listening to Finn's dream the first time around, right? Finn's like, dude, I had a wild dream last night. He's like, oh, I had one too. And then they just start talking about breakfast and he doesn't even let Finn get a word out. And then the second time Finn's talking about like, again, the Ice King and Flame Princess fighting and all this stuff. And then he's like, and then the Cosmic Owl was there. And then Jake's like, you just have to make this dream come true. You got to go see what the Cosmic Owl was saying. Not even paying attention to what the dream was. And so major mistake that Jake, I don't know if he was just he's just disinterested with like Flame Princess and Finn's relationship at this point. But he used to be all up in it. Like, you know, here's the tiers and you can't go past tier 2. You're not ready for tier 6, all that stuff.
Right.
And now he's just
I wonder,
passive.
Is there a history between like why does Jake know so much about the Cosmic Owl? Is that something that we're going to determine later on in the show? Or is it just he's a spiritual person and he's been around for a while and he's aware of things?
Around for a while. You know, we know that Jake's buddies with Prismo, so I assume that maybe Prismo's also said some stuff. But I can't remember if that first Cosmic Owl dream was before his introduction to Prismo. which it might
Yeah,
have
I
been.
don't recall.
Regardless, there is the library, which we've spent a little bit of time in. And there's tons of those books and resources at the library.
Mhm.
I know Jake doesn't like to read, but there's a good chance that like Jake has looked into prophetic dreams before and you know, pre-adventuring with Finn.
Yeah, and he seems like someone who's pretty aware of his beliefs or whatever, you know. So maybe he has, but I will say I was very curious about Jake's dream. I mean, he talks about they found some paintings and everybody's eyes lit up, and then Cinnamon Bun's like, "Yeah, I saw it from miles away." I was like, "All right, well, I kind of want to explore Jake's dream a little bit. Why can't we?" Like, let's have a little side quest, a little B plot happening.
I'm trying to remember
have Jake kind of go after his own dream. We haven't. There was no B plot this episode. I don't think so, right? It was just straight up. Here's what's happening with Finn and Flame Princess and Ice King, and that's fine. But I think that would have been a fun B plot to explore a little bit.
Yeah, Jake doing a little side mission or something,
right?
Like that.
Maybe he gets BMO and Cinnamon Bun, and then they go and look for these paintings that were in his dream or something like that. And maybe the owl appears for him as well. I mean, this is maybe if the episode was 22 minutes, right? And we didn't have these short, like 11-minute episodes that we're working with. But yeah, I don't know. It was fun.
Cool. But yeah, overall, well, now I've lost my train of thought thinking about Jake's dream right now. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to like the manipulation, because I do think Finn is like framing that whole interaction in a really poor manner. Like he sets up and he's like, "Oh yeah, like isn't that dude that like you hate, or that big jerk that you hate, you know, so much?" Like giving her these like a
somewhat inception-y, like gaslighty,
like getting into her brain, like introducing the situation in a way that puts him into a negative light, and then as Ice King is saying like, "Oh my gosh, hey kids, fine day for a picnic." Like he's just like enjoying himself. It looks like he's coming home from getting groceries or something. And again, Finn's just like, "Dude, what is up with the tone of his voice? That was so rude." And of course, pretty quick to anger, Flame Princess gets a little pissed off about it and goes and again beats the hell out of the guy. Like poor old man just getting destroyed by Flame Princess this episode. But I don't know.
It's the selfishness for Finn. And that's what actually one of the first things you said in the episode that struck a chord with me a little bit is that this is like a new part of his growing up. We've done some maturity stuff. We've talked about how this doesn't feel like the season 1 adventure, fight the bad guy, get the treasure. You know, that he has these little moments of growing up, and this is a big one. And what I think is really cool about this episode is the scene where he, like during the big battle, all the water gets like steamed on the ground and he passes out and has the final dream, which is Flame Princess coming up, lights his crotch on fire, and then like blows him up and he becomes the baby, half baby man baby, hairy baby man Finn, and starts speaking in the language of the little people. Do you remember like when he was manipulating all the little people and it was like, wah, 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 wah.
Right.
And I think that's an amazing, I mean, I've missed that for tons of times that I've watched this episode. I'm like, oh, you just talking like a baby, but not factoring in he's reverted back to what we thought he learned his lesson about in terms of manipulating people in a fake world context. And there was
all the little people
not really. Yeah. Cause there wasn't consequences, man. So a lot of the times it's like, you realize that you can learn something on paper 1,000 times and you can learn how to not make this mistake. And you can learn how to, you know, being nice to your enemies, you turn the other cheek. It's so easy to learn on paper. And it's not until you realize the consequences of your actions actually affecting you is when that lesson like sets into play. So I think the big one here is that Finn is just like, oh, it's not just like I do what I want, I beat the bad guy and I feel good. There's a lot of other factors involved here. And he does, I think that he learns a little bit of that when he goes and picks Simon up and he's carrying Simon over his back, you know, like he's got his beard like a book bag. And he kind of taps in. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't just hurt Flame Princess. I hurt Simon." And like, Simon and he uses Simon's name in that letter specifically to remind us, the viewer, that he knows he's a real person.
He's aware, and he's aware that he's hurting this guy to get his kicks, which we talked about how perverse. Finn's actions are.
I didn't want to talk
things.
about it too much.
You don't want to talk about it too much.
Except for the fact that it's
weird.
obvious. And
it's very obvious.
I just don't know how you sneak that into a kid's show without.
I don't know. He's getting his Jimmy's all.
What is it? The CCT, whatever. What's the thing that like they rate TV shows and they're like, you can't put this in there.
Oh, I'm not sure.
I'm like, okay, we've got this like relatively PG rated show, and it's just like he's getting his jimmies off.
Right. The first
flame
dream, the flames are being shot right at his crotch. And of course, in that very first fight, you have him blushing and he's just infatuated by the situation. It does it for him, right? And so he has this dream, and I'm guessing this is one of his first dreams of that nature. And his mind, he's like, that felt so great. That was such a good dream. I want to recreate it. And that's all he can think about. He's not thinking about the context of it. And I really think it's interesting that he didn't need to include Ice King. I think that's what he's missing is what he liked about that dream was Flame Princess and how powerful she was and the display of like herself and her confidence and all these things. And he could have found that in other ways, which probably would have led to other dreams, blah, blah, blah. But instead he goes, you know what? This is how it happened. I'm going to recreate this situation any way that I can. And that's just, again, poorly interpreting a dream. And it's just a shame that he felt like he needed to involve Ice King. And of course, the second time he has the dream, Ice King was the one who won the fight. So it is kind of goofy that all of a sudden Ice King's the one shooting ice on his crotch.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, and I like that you mentioned to like what Finn's drawn to and attracted in her. And I was like, well, that's kind of an interesting point that we as people as well tend to, there's two dynamics. You have an opposites attract mentality in a lot of people. And you're like, wow, that person's so different and it's mysterious and that's somewhat attractive. Finn and Flame Princess have that 100%. He's a bag of water and she's a fire. And it's this opposites attract mentality. But as we saw in Vault of Bones, he really, really, really wants her to like dungeon crawling. And he's like, isn't this so fun? And she's like, no, not really. And there's also, I think, a level of attraction of being so similar. So how to strike the balance of that. And I said, when I say being so similar, just enjoying the same things, liking the same things. You can't have, there's an opposites attract mentality where you do want to have someone that pushes you out of your comfort zone or, it's not just like hanging out with a mirror every day, but you want that person also to be unique, or you want them to be unique and cool, but you want them to still enjoy the same things as you. So where is that? And I think you find your partner and someone who strikes that balance of liking what you do. And so I say all that to say, because Finn tried hard with the dungeon and obviously she's not going to dungeon crawl with him. This one, I think he's like, oh, this is awesome. She's like a kick-ass fighter and I like fighting. And I'm with you though. I didn't even think about her being like, well, it's kind of showing off. I can't tell if it's showing off like her brute force or actually like specifically beating up bad guys.
Right. I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's just beating up bad guys. Like that would be kind of silly. I mean,
but that's what Finn likes to do. That's what he likes to go beat evil.
He just likes inflicting pain on people.
Well, defeating evil specifically.
Right.
And I think that that's probably something that he has.
But he knows that Ice King isn't evil anymore. Like I feel like they're past that part of the show.
And that's where Finn's mistake was that Ice King's just the obvious one that's like right there at any time. He probably knows he's not going to be able to get her to go on an adventure with him because he likes the adventuring aspect and he wants her to defeat evil his way. And if she again, like we talked about at the beginning, she's still figuring herself out. She's still figuring what's evil and what's not. So how is she going to be like, if he's like, yeah, go beat that bad guy up over there. She might just be like, what makes him bad? That she's like, still dealing with that in her own sense of good versus evil. So it's terribly manipulative because of that.
What's incredibly clear is they're both Ice King and Flame Princess. They're Well, he is unwilling, and she is unaware, and he is also unaware of what they're being used for. And that's a pretty big line to cross in my mind. Like, there's a central nature to what's going on, and they're involved, but they're unaware, or it's unbeknownst to them, and that's not cool in any way. And of course, Ben uses like what he knows. He's like so personal. He knows both of these people pretty well at this point, and he uses very personal insults to get into them when he's writing those letters to piss them off, to have them fight one more time. And of course, it ends up being this massive battle where she turns into a supernova form and is destroying mountains and whatnot. Like, Finn is going pretty deep, where she was talking about your feet smell like face cheeks, your stupid candles smell heinous, and you can't even kiss Finn without Toad's freaking out. And that's a big insecurity for her. And for Simon, I mean, he's just like, no princess will ever marry you, which again, kind of surface level, but like that's really important to the Ice King. And then calls him Simple Simon at the end. I'm like, so damn, dude. Yeah. And so of course they get pissed off. And
he drops in knowledge about both of them. That's sensitive knowledge that, again, neither one of them should know. And she was like, I kind of figured, because there was stuff in that letter, or that makes sense. Yeah, he wouldn't have known. Yeah,
right. And that's why it's going to be really, really hard. Like, he's going to have to do some really serious grafting if he's ever going to be able to get back with Flame Princess. But I do believe, because of the owl and because of the prophetic dream, like, this feels like this is probably going to be the hard cut with their relationship. I mean, teenagers have broken up for less in the past, and he used something that is very like insecurities for both of them, for her to get under her skin and piss her off enough to go like destroy the Ice Kingdom. That's a pretty big deal. And I don't think they're going to bounce back from this one, certainly. But her face when she read the letter, dude, nightmare fuel, absolute nightmare fuel. I'm going to have to screenshot that and post it, because she looks terrifying.
yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to mess with that person.
It's terrible when somebody you like know and trust takes something, again, some part of you that they know, and they, I don't know, push on the gas of that, and it's either stressful, or I had this happen to me one time, and I was furious, and it's like, it's not done. Like, again, Finn, there was nothing malicious about what Finn had done there. And it's really not, there's not even too much consequence until she gets really hurt and Ice King gets really hurt and she's burning down the Ice Kingdom, is the after effect of it all. But when I was in high school, the girlfriend that I had that was very unhealthy for me, and she was very manipulative and everything like that. She was like hanging out with a friend one night, and like I cared about her a lot. And, you know, kids text a lot. So she starts texting me. She's like, my friend Tabitha's over and we're going to go out and like walk through the woods or whatever. And she lived out in the middle of nowhere, South Carolina. And I was like, okay. And I just kept getting these texts that like they were like getting lost and that somebody was following them. And I was freaking out and I was trying to call her. And then like an hour later after all this, I was like, do I need to call your parents? Like, they're like, they called me back and they're like, oh my gosh, you're so gullible. And I was like, gosh, y'all were just messing with me just for fun, or just because it's like sweet that I care about you. But like, I hated it. I mean, and I was like, that's got to be that feeling of like, you manipulated either some part of me that you knew you liked, like the fact that I cared about her a lot, just so I would show that I cared about you a lot, just so you could show your friend like, oh, my boyfriend loves me so much, or it's just a funny prank or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, that's not funny. That's truly manipulating something that obviously, you know, if I wasn't a caring boyfriend, I'd be like, you guys are messing around. You're lying, whatever, text me when you're home. But of course, I wasn't that kind of person. So I've been hurt in that kind of way. And it feels very betraying, even if there's not consequences. You're just like, dude, the people that can push your buttons, you give them a lot of trust to not push your buttons. You know what I mean?
And she even says that when Flame Princess, when Flame Princess is fighting Ice King, like kind of punching at Ice King's like frozen head that he creates to protect himself for a minute, when they're fighting the second time, she's like, look, even if you're someone I'm cool with, like I don't want to be made fun of, and especially not from someone I don't really know that well.
Yeah.
And so there is a line, even when you are in love with someone, like there's a line for like poking fun of that you shouldn't be crossing in a relationship, right? And this causes this whole interaction, especially the letters, causes Flame Princess to completely lose her trust in Finn, as far as we know, right? And so she needs some time. She says she needs time to be alone. They didn't quite break up, but I think it's happening. Like it's done in my mind.
No, it's done. Yeah, like I mean, you're if that's you're theoretically speaking, yeah, you're right. They're kind of. I don't think there was ever an official. You're my girlfriend.
Yeah,
you're my boyfriend.
Got the ick. Like he's reading. He says, "I wrote the letter," or whatever. All she can hear is the wah 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 wah, because that's the ick setting in.
She sees him as an immature baby.
She's done.
No.
Right? Yeah, immature man. A man who. I guess the man baby is him maturing, him age-wise, physically maturing, but then baby internally, he can't speak. There's no communication between them. It doesn't matter anymore. Finn
like he may look like a man, but he's not a man yet.
Right. And the apologizing that Finn doesn't just automatically fix everything. Like I think Finn thinks in his mind, if he comes clean, it's going to be done. And I'm like, there's just a whole nother level, as I said earlier, grafting, like, if he does want this relationship to continue and he believes that there's a chance or they're meant to be or whatever, like he's going to have to put in a lot of effort to make that happen. It's not just going to happen overnight or through a simple apology and then the next day you're fine, right?
Well, and it's Finn learning that kind of mature lesson of he's got a reasoning for it. Again, he's got a reason why this wasn't anything malicious. I didn't mean for anybody to get hurt. I was getting my willies off with these dreams, and that's his if we didn't hear his wah 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 voice get started, that's probably would have been his explanation, was like, and then I had a dream and then it was awesome and I wanted you guys to fight again because it was awesome, but then the cosmic owl was there, so I really need to make the dream happen again because it was prophetic. And it's at that point it doesn't matter because it's like he crossed that line.
Yeah,
like
I think there's no explaining the situation for him, unfortunately. Like I think from the get-go, from the second time he saw them fight or whatever, I don't think he could go to the Flame Princess and be like, hey, here's what's happening. And
no, but I'm saying I think
she's gonna be cool with that.
I think he thought he could have done that. And that's maybe the big lesson too, of just like, even if I have a good reason for doing so, like, and I say good reason, but maybe in his mind, the cosmic owl dream.
He's driven, right? Yeah. I think he's unfortunately driven by these desires that he just can't control or can't explain. And you do stupid things, and he does this stupid thing, unfortunately.
And it was the self-fulfilling prophecy. He wanted to hear what the cosmic owl said. And the thing that the cosmic owl said was, you blew it. And he wouldn't have blown it if he wasn't on the pursuit of trying to have the dream again to hear what the cosmic owl said, which is absolutely the self-fulfilling prophecy of it all.
I really loved that third dream. I thought that was a really great way to go about the episode, or an interpretation of like what would happen in my mind. It was so cool because you have, of course, it starts out the way that Finn wants it to, and almost immediately he stops enjoying it. He's freaking out. Like you see the smoke coming out of his hat a little bit around his face. And then the way that they drew Flame Princess, like him looking at her, all of a sudden, and I don't know if I have a reason for this or how to explain this, but she looks kind of void of conscious in a sense. Like it's not really her anymore. There's something about it that it seems like it's not herself. And then Finn explodes, turns into the man baby, and his appearance, and all of a sudden Flame Princess is back. So maybe we're going back to her perspective. Is Finn is this man baby who's gross. He grosses her out. He's got stubble and giant man legs and baby arms, and of course the baby hat and stuff, and can't communicate at all. Is doing the wah 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 wah, and then the owl. That whole sequence is just great. If that's my actual tops for this episode, it might be my actual tops for this episode.
Yeah. It's a good one. I say my tops was a little bit a funnier scene. I think it snuck by in this episode, but I don't know why it got me so good. But when she burns down the big ice mech per se, and Finn runs in there and checks on Ice King, and Ice King's like, save Gunter. And he goes, and he's like, wait a minute, just save me first. And then he throws the little thing off Gunter, can't figure out how to do CPR on a penguin, and Gunter's like, meh, 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 meh. I thought that just something agree. About that was a Adventure Time moment in this show. Like this, Something
Ice
about
King
that
just being
little
like,
thing.
wait, I meant after you saved me is
After you saved me.
just the cherry on top for that moment for sure.
Which also, again, a subtle moment in this episode where my lovely came up was the teddy bear snow warrior that was just like, bear hug and got her around. Again, I don't know why. I think that my lovely had to be teddy bear snow warrior. Gunter would have been a close second for me. I liked Gunter in this episode.
I was trying not to do Gunther. I was trying because he does the little water gun. He comes out of Ice King's beard when they're flying up and they're having their third big battle, and he does like spits water out of his mouth at Flame Princess, and that does damage. And I'm like, that's so stupid.
Yeah,
but
it's a great little.
So good.
He's like a little Pokemon in that scene.
Right. I do think what was it that he called them? The Legion of Snow Warriors that Ice King plays, that feels a little bit like a trap card or something. Like he's playing, if you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Or playing Magic the Gathering, that's a card like this will enact within 4 turns or 3 turns or something like that. Like it's a long play because certainly he's looking all upset. He's got like little crying.
Legions of warriors walking around the battlefield.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And all of a sudden he starts to smirk and she's just like, why are you smiling? Like what's going on? This is gross. And then the hug happens. And he wins, man. I mean, he played the long game and won it. Sometimes that's the right strategy, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, again, I love his, I just wish we got, like when you said, he just did his power and was like Ice King. And I was like, dude, he's an ice ninja. And maybe he's got such a bad memory he can never remember.
We're never going to see spells. The Ice Ninja powers again.
Those were too cool,
too overpowered, too OP.
He would have been so good. But like he does other stuff. He does pretty much enough ice stuff that's like similar to. And again, his power is manipulating the environment. So it is much more of like, except for putting an ice sword in your hand, it's like, well, I'm going to make it snow and I'm going to like all the stuff, all the more elemental type fighting. Yeah.
Yeah. And as we're talking about it, I'm thinking like maybe this was just such an entertaining episode to watch with all the powers. And because it's not all that often that we get to see the magic users use really crazy cool powers and fight each other in like an epic way. I mean, the one that keeps popping in my head is freaking Abracadabra just doing cantrips, and that's not that cool, right? So this is really neat that we do get to see some like the first thing that Ice King does is he makes it looks like a little snowball over his head, and then you see it fall to the ground and it destroys a tree. It's a boulder of snow. Like it's really incredibly cool.
You kind of start to see how he's OP, and just because he's a goofy guy doesn't mean that it's a lack of him being able to like turn a mountain into a monster and have 3-ton boulders of snow over his head either.
Exactly. Maybe we don't need a B plot when you've got that plus Supernova Flame Princess versus Ice King using his entire home mountain out of ice turning into a mech, which is kind of rad as well. So
hold on to that sentiment because they had the Elementals miniseries that we've talked about. That's just hold on to that sentiment of like, man, he's really OP. I wonder why, and Flame Princess is the most powerful of these people. And it's like, is she the most powerful, or are there other balances of power? That's a little bit of a spoiler drop. But just take that into consideration.
I forget about all the sound bites because we can actually hear them. In the past, we couldn't hear them, and it was Michael putting them in there retroactively. So sometimes they get me. That's a good one.
I've got a couple I don't use it on everything too. So but good. Overall, really, I think canon wise, great episode. Doesn't feel the most Adventure Timey because of, I don't know. We just don't have as many of those like subtle behind the scenes joke. That's why I like pulling in Ice King and Gunter in this episode. Kind of saved it and made it feel a lot more Adventure Timey.
Right. We had 2 moments that were really good, funny goofiness, and then the rest was pretty serious. Kind of
pretty straightforward.
Weird Finn sexual things.
Weird Finn
didn't really need to get into that, but it certainly was such a big part of this. I mean, it shocked me. I'll be honest. When we saw that first stream and the flame were going at Finn and making him feel good, I was just like, is that going at his crotch? I had to rewind it and recheck it out.
Double check, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that definitely was. And then he turns around and the flames are going at his butt. And I'm just like, Ben, you're having one heck of a dream, bud.
It's biblical, man. It's what is it? What it's called? Flame in your loins is what it says in the Bible. So,
oh my gosh, yeah, that was what was happening. Well, what's your
his
lesson,
loins were
dude?
burning.
Actually, before lesson, do you have any other deep thoughts or Neddy's factoids for me?
No deep thoughts. We have a couple of factoids. I was going to even see. We might have just honestly most of it was. You know what? I don't think we talked about all the factoids in some way, shape, or form.
All the little people, I feel like, was a big reference. That was a good call.
And then we talked about Dragon Ball Z and Kamehameha or Kamehameha. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, is that what it is then?
Kamehameha. Yeah.
Okay.
When he does
I'm not going to correct you. Yeah.
I never watched Dragon Ball Z. I don't think I was technically allowed to watch it.
I love this. Also, I'm bullying you for not being nerdy. So this is like
I've heard it. That if I know two things about Dragon Ball Z, I know it's just like Goku and then the like the charge up blast ball coming on me. So that's all I know. Am I mispronouncing that? I'm not mispronouncing that. Totally.
No, that was better. That was better that time. That was better.
I think I'm just not saying it in a Japanese accent. So it sounds weird.
Well, let's not do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, I don't want to get canceled for that one. But yeah, no, I think I'd say also that the other cool thing, and this actually plays into my recommendation, is the scene that they're fighting, they said is reminiscent of Pokemon 2000 when Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres are fighting Lugia, and there's like all the things in the sky, like the fire and the ice coming out of the sky during that scene.
A little bit. So. I'll give it a little bit. It's like that's a reach for sure in my mind, but I can see the references like the lightning coming down, like I guess it's ice.
Yeah.
In this episode coming
down.
Does a
little. It's
scorching the
Moltres
ground
and Articuno,
right?
Making fire and ice come out of the sky. It's a little reminiscent of that. So that's my factoids lessons. What'd you learn today?
Well, I think it goes without saying. I mean, my lesson is you should not involve any unwilling or unaware participants in your sensual behaviors. I think that should be just
unwilling participants is the lesson.
Everyone is pretty aware of. Like, come on, y'all. We know better than this. Finn should know better than that. I mean, maybe he doesn't, but now he does. Hopefully.
Yeah, that's a good lesson too. Mine is you got to be very careful with people because the closer we pull people in, the more we really get to know them specifically. The Finn hurts Flame Princess and Ice King both by how much he does know about them and you're able to manipulate people more when you know what makes them tick. And that's a responsibility that you have to have as it's like the lesson from growing up as an adult is you have to like protect people that are vulnerable and that open up to you and that they go, she's like, yeah, I'm going to show you my candles and I'm going to show you that I'm sensitive about not being able to kiss you. And he used that against her. And it's a huge violation of trust. So that's it. Mine is be careful with people that are close to you because it doesn't take much to trigger them. Because it's, again, you always have those in the back of your mind, pull them out at this drop of a hat too. So,
and of course it's always going to hurt way worse when someone you're close with does something against you in a negative way, right? Than some stranger or someone that you aren't as close with. So yeah, that's great, man. Well,
good lessons. Good
little episode. Good lesson. If y'all want to get to know us a little bit more, you can check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/neverendingadventure podcast. We also have Instagram, Never Ending Adventure Podcast, TikTok at Never Ending Adventure Cast, Twitter, NEA_podcast. Email us your thoughts, your opinions. We don't have a Traveler's Log this week. We looked at the Traveler's Logs before this episode. There are 4 that are essays, and I will read through them before me and Ned are sitting down to record next time. Because I was like,
there's some one we might have to take your Traveler's Log and chop it down a little bit and maybe not read it
into a couple episodes or something. That's nea.travelerslog@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts, your opinions. I just said that. Stickers for review. If you do a review, let us know. We'll send you a sticker. Ned, let's talk about Rex for a minute before we get off for this week.
You got a good recommendation for the week? Something you've been jamming on?
I do. I mean, we're still in October at the time of recording this. I'm sure we won't be when this releases, but Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho from 1960 is the first of the scary movies that I've watched this year. As y'all know, I watch one scary movie a year, and me and Ali kind of both agreed that doesn't really count because it's not that scary. There's definitely
it's there, man. It's
creepy.
It holds up
a little
bit.
No, it holds up without a doubt. It's a good movie. It's slow pacing. The directing was great for its time. It's not incredible in present day, and of course, none of the shots are all that insane. And when people start to die in the movie, it's kind of goofy more than anything. But there's some. I don't want to spoil anything. It's good. It's a good film. I really enjoyed it.
Don't spoil it for if anybody does. It's right. I don't know. For a
movie
know. That long,
I didn't know.
That
Let's
old,
just say that.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. If you enjoyed it better because you didn't have it spoiled, like you don't want to spoil it for someone else.
And I was thinking about it the next day, and I think that's why I was like, I can rent this because it's stuck in my mind, even though it was kind of simple and I wasn't terrified. It was off-putting, and I didn't really know where it was going. But at the same time, and I had so many theories as we're watching this movie. And so the next day I'm still thinking about it. And I'm like, it was probably better than I initially thought it was because it stuck with me so well.
Yeah. You have to think contextually too. There's not a lot of movies that had like actual murder scenes that happen.
Right. It's like an OG slasher. Like it might be the OG slasher film.
It is. It is.
Yeah. What's your rec, man?
My rec is actually, I think, one that you're going to like a lot. I finally figured out and had a buddy tell me how to use the emulators on your phone, like the Game Boy emulators. And I just was like, I always got nervous about downloading stuff online. Is it going to be a virus and is it going to hack my whatever? He showed me a good one. So I just played through way too fast, played through Pokemon Soul Silver and Pokemon Yellow in the course of like 2 weeks. It's like, because the character moves super fast on the screen. You can just like burn through the game. Then I was like, oh my gosh, there's aspects of this game that would just take, I mean, if you were actually trying to like catch Mewtwo in Pokemon Yellow, that it like on that little game, because it was sped up so fast, had I not, and of course that's for me.
Without a Master Ball?
Without a Master Ball, yeah.
Okay. Why'd you use your Master Ball on? If not,
I forgot Mewtwo was at the end of the game and was impossible to catch. So I used it on the Zapdos because that's like one of my favorite characters. Yeah, and I was like, okay. Then I went back and I was like, I made a mistake. So I used the Master Ball too early.
Dude, you know it's kind of cool. Just to go with that rec that you're saying, Pokemon Yellow and the original, and I've done this on my original cartridge of Pokemon Yellow for Game Boy. You can actually get Mew in the game. I always thought it was like, because there was all these rumors and stuff. He's behind the truck, whatever. Yeah, it's a code, and there's a way of like, move here, do this, save in this moment or whatever, and then a legitimate Mew appears and you can catch it. And so I'm like, I think you got to be pretty deep into the game. I might be 7 badges into the game and I got a Mew, and I'm just like, that's so sick, man. Like, I love that that's actually part of the game.
It's cool. I think it was snuck in there. Like somebody was supposed to delete it out of the code, and they did leave it in there. And I don't know if they meant for somebody to be able to hack it and get it, but somebody figured out it. And I don't remember if you remember, did you ever have like that actual like link cables for the Game Boys to like do the trades and stuff like that? There was one for Game Boy Color with Pokemon Silver to where like I caught the Lugia, and then you'd link and then you would do a trade and then shut the game off, like both Game Boys off at the same time. Yep. And then it would duplicate and you'd both have Lugia in your boxes. And so that was we were hacking that one big time. Just freaking 11-year-old hackers in Game Boys.
Now you need to get into the like fan made versions of the games, because there's some good ones out there. I
really wanted to see if there was the version where when you can like blend Pokemon together and it creates new Pokemon.
Fusion or something like that.
Something crazy like that.
There's also one where you're Team Rocket. I really want to try that one, where you play as a kid who ends up becoming involved in a gang.
I watched somebody who played a fan version that you're playing as a gym leader, and so you have to pick like a type, and you have to
Bug.
Like, the guy was like, absolutely do not pick Bug, and so it was like Fairy. He picked Dragon because Dragon, you had to do something, and he was like, oh, then if somebody comes in with Fairy type, then I'm going to get destroyed. And it was a cool walkthrough for sure. There's old Banksy boy.
Sorry, he must have saw something. Look at that fur, dog. Chill out. Shake it off.
Oh, man.
Good boy.
But yeah,
He
that's
just shook it
super
off.
fun, Rex. And it really, playing Soul Silver again was like, okay, I
Yeah.
think one of our, if we do a special again soon, we should go into Pokemon 2000 for sure.
Okay. I'm down for that. That sounds great. It's been a minute since we've done one on here. We've done one on the Patreon. But yeah, speaking of which, we need to record a Patreon sometime soon. And everybody, we just basically had a small Patreon episode, very small. This is not quite what I would consider a full episode, but y'all, if you, want to subscribe, please do. It helps. It helps pay for the podcast.
Yeah, I know we're in a slower season of releases from the Patreon podcast, and this podcast is pretty much, I'm keeping it bi-weekly until we can make sure we're firm-footed at this point. Yeah. But this is a slower season, but regardless, subscribing helps absolutely. We're gonna consider upgrading into some video aspects and some like cool studio aspects to where we could add a visual element, which then means we can probably start socials back up a lot easier, and so on and so forth. That's
kind of the dream, and that would be funded fully through the Patreon itself, which is the hopes. So that would be incredible. Anyways, y'all, we'll let y'all go, and we'll talk to you again real soon. In a week and a half.
Maybe a little
Buddy forever.